right wing or left wing?
I really like buffalo wings.
Hi, and welcome back to Through the Muck and the Mire. I'm your host, David Hollifield. Tonight, I want to talk to you about a little bit of a, I guess I'll say, confrontation that happened tonight in my constitutional law class over Zoom. So I'll give you a little bit of background first. We're talking about Roe v. Wade and abortion. And, actually, Roe v. Wade was last week. So this week, we focused on the next case, which is actually the current abortion law. Most people don't know that fact, though. Which is Planned Parenthood versus Casey. And Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood, basically they all centered around the concept of liberty under due process in the 14th Amendment. And that could end up being a weak point in the future. And we got to the point where we started talking about what are different arguments that could have been made or maybe should have been made or could be made in future cases. And we started talking about equal protections instead of due process. So the equal protections clause instead of due process clause. Now, we don't need to get into the weeds about the different arguments and stuff like that. This isn't a video about abortion. This is a video about equality and the fact that, I have to acknowledge this first. This is an ironic video by an emotionally upset white male that's upset that he was treated differently because of his gender. And I'm that man. So let me get that out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and acknowledge right now that this video is ironic because I'm a white guy complaining about racism and gender inequality and whatever. But just because this video is ironic doesn't mean that everything I'm about to say is not true. So then, this liberal, I don't know if he's liberal or not. He might be, just based off of the other conversations that he's had in this class. He got on the microphone talking to the professor and said, wouldn't liberals not want to go down that road of using equal protection for future abortion cases because it could lead to other unintended consequences like the military draft, like forcing equal protections into the military draft if we ever had one in the future. So I said in the chat box, why wouldn't liberals want equal protections in military drafts? That's literally something that RBG fought for because she was a true feminist and she wanted true equality. She wanted all things equal. Just the question alone he said, wouldn't liberals not want to use the equal protections clause because it could hurt them in the future by asking for more equality in areas that they don't want equality? That's actually what that fucking comment means. That's what that question means. You're asking maybe we shouldn't use that argument because then they could force it on us to make other things equal that we don't want to be equal, like forcing men to go die in wars. So anyways, yeah, so I said, well, that's not fair to men. And a lady got on the chat and said, well, some things shouldn't be fair for men. And I'm like, maybe that comment was made in jest. I understand the sentiment. White people, I even acknowledge the fact that white people and males have some inherent privileges. I'm not the type of person to deny any kind of privilege whatsoever. So I understand where that sentiment came from, but it's still wrong. You're still saying that you want equality, but then actively saying that you don't want equality at the same time. So she said, something should be unfair for men. And I said, or we could just make everything fair for everyone. And her reply was, says a man. Oh, gotcha. And people start chiming in, cheering her on. and I said, asking for equality for all people is literally feminism, because they want equal protection, equal sexes, equality of the sexes is feminism. So my statement was a feminist statement, literally is feminist statement, and I'm being attacked for it because I'm a man. And then the next comment to that was, oh, so now you're going to mansplain feminism to a female? Yeah, I guess so, because it's all I did was literally just say what the definition of feminism is. Just because I'm a man doesn't mean that explanation is wrong. Like if I have to thank my wife for this, because we had this conversation, you know, I had to talk to her about it, and she was like, that's such a stupid thing to say. Because like, what if a man, you know, says like, be careful crossing the street because there's heavy traffic today. Like, are you going to scoff it off and just like blindly walk into traffic because a man told you to be careful? Like, have fun getting hit by a truck. Anyways, somebody chimed in and was like, just quit while you're ahead, or no, quit while you're behind. And then I feel like there's one more comment I made in the chat, but either way, eventually the professor, I guess it caught his attention, and he was like, hey, David, do you want to get on the microphone and talk about it? And then one of these cringy people that is like acting like I'm getting owned or something, gets on his microphone before I have a chance to unmute, and is like, oh, I doubt he wants to support his argument. Immediately unmute. I would be glad to support my argument, because I'm literally not even your fucking enemy, and this isn't an argument. We both want equality, and you're acting like, because the context of this equality is not the type that you won't feel like talking about, that oh, well, I'm a white male, so I'm your enemy. I'm not your enemy. I'm not. So like, you're just making yourself look stupid right now. So then I mean, I just said exactly that. I said, you know, I don't understand why I'm being attacked for saying that everything should be equal. And, you know, then the female that had originally spoken up and said the thing about like, oh, well, you're a man. She got on and she was like, well, and she starts listing off all these things that she, like, unfair treatment that I guess that she has, you know, the unfair ways that she's been treated throughout her life. And the whole time I'm literally nodding my head in agreement with her. And then I get to talk and I say, I literally agree with everything that you just said. I hate all of that for you. I think that that's unfair. And that's why I think that everything should be made fair for all people. And then the professor said something about like, I guess like basically he agrees, but essentially like, we don't live in a fair world. We don't live in an ideal world. So like, we can't expect like idealness or something. But that's not something like I hate that argument. That's just like, we don't live in an ideal world, or we don't live in a perfect world, or we don't live in a fair world. So we should just accept and continue to keep things unfair. And we should like, you're like essentially defeating your own arguments. Like why, you know, anybody that wants to be a racist could just use your exact argument and say, well, I mean, we live in an unfair world. So it's, I mean, I can't be perfect. Humans aren't perfect. So I'm allowed to be a racist. Like, okay, well, they just use your justification against you. Wouldn't it just be better if everyone, like you and me and everybody else, was striving for ideal outcomes anyways? Like, yeah, the world is not perfect. It's not ideal. But we can make it more ideal if you and I try to make things more ideal. Like, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Or, in your case, it's a self-defeating argument. Like, you're just like, oh, well, things aren't ideal, so I'm not going to try to make it more. Like, the same thing applies to politics. Like, that whole, I'm not going to vote for them because nobody else will vote for them. Well, if you vote for them, then they'll have more votes, and then other people will feel comfortable voting for them. Like, that's how that works. So essentially, to sum this up, I think that if you say that you actually want equality or equitable outcomes or whatever, like, maybe be consistent with that across the board for everything. for everyone. I don't like you're making yourself look dumb. You're being a hypocrite. And like, just as much as I'm ironic saying, you know, like me being a white male, ironically complaining that I was treated poorly because I'm a male in this instance, you are just as ironic saying that you want equality, but then actively saying that men should be treated unfairly in certain circumstances. Like, how ironic is that? It's just as ironic as me complaining about being treated unfairly. So let's just all try to not be hypocrites and acknowledge the fact that not all white men are your enemy. I am not your enemy. So with that, I bid you adieu. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and thank you for watching.